Howdy and welcome to Sunburnt Gaming. Today we'll be doing a slightly different video to normal. Previously on this channel we've put out actual play recordings for some of our campaigns, and while that is something we will be continuing to do, we also want to branch out into other forms of content. RPGs as a medium is an interesting one and something I like to discuss and examine, rather than just play. As a result, we are going to be starting to upload videos here and there, like reviews or discussion videos that examine the design of various games. But rather than just jumping into that immediately, I wanted to do a short video that gives a picture on our mindset when it comes to critique, and what our biases are when it comes to RPGs, so that we're on the same page. Our views here are obviously going to be shaped by what we have experienced so far, and while I'm very driven by the idea of exploring new games, I haven't read or played them all. That is just obvious. No one has played them all. So what has my experience been? A big chunk of my experience, especially in my teens, was with some rather popular traditional games, like the various editions of Dungeons & Dragons, or the different iterations on the storyteller system, such as the Awakening game that we have up on the channel. But my group isn't limited to this paradigm. As we left our teens, we learnt other styles of play, such as ones with a more narrative focus, focused around their themes, such as Dread or Masks. The genre of tactical games that are descended from 4E, like Weirdwood Wand and Lancer. GM-less games like Death Takes a Holiday or the chaos of Stacks of Goblins. And even some solo RPG experience. Our general dynamic has been to aim that each campaign be very different to the last, to give the group a fresh experience. But also, whenever someone can't make it to a session, I'll just run a one-shot of something that we haven't played before. But unfortunately, there are still only so many hours we can get for playing these games. So, like many in this space, I have of course read far more games than I have played. In my case, I was always really big into trying to read as many as I could, to better understand and see new perspectives on how things can be put together. But my reading collection spiked severely after a number of charity-focused RPG bundles on itch. As a result, I have ended up reading enough that I needed to create a spreadsheet to better keep track, and I still have quite a number to get through. Okay, so now that we have a baseline, what sort of lenses is this channel going to be viewing games through when we do these critiques, reviews, discussions? What are our key perspectives? I'm primarily going to be examining things through 5 different lenses: high concept, dynamics, teaching, breadth/depth, and vibes. For high concept, that means digging into a game's core premises and seeing what it sells itself about and how well it then executes on those concepts. This is pretty high up there for me in importance, because the RPG sphere has so many options. If your game isn't about anything in particular, I don't have a strong reason to use it when it comes to running a session over a game that can do the exact same thing, but better. Whenever a game leans into its premise strongly and really makes you feel like that particular thing, whether that be a vampire, a god, or a scheming mastermind, it gives me a reason to play it over just grabbing a generic engine like 24XX, Cortex, or Fate. Our next topic is dynamics. Dynamics is somewhat related to these themes and concepts that we mentioned earlier, but it takes a very different direction. In this case, when I say dynamics, I'll be referring to how the various mechanics the game presents and utilizes interact with each other and interact with player behavior, leading to various different outcomes in play. Sometimes the mechanics will align in ways that really encourage certain mindsets in the players or create highly evocative moments. Other times you'll find that a game's systems have friction with each other, or some of the game's focuses, creating a lesser play experience. Teaching. How a game communicates its ideas to the reader is so important. A game that is constantly contradictory or doesn't explain basic elements of itself can lead to a lot more work on the part of the players in a way that I don't feel especially satisfying, and can lead to a bit of a friction as people at the same table may have very different mental images as to what is meant to be going on. When I read an RPG, I want to know how it's going to work to a degree and have everyone else on the same page. Now, to be clear myself, this does not mean that more rules is better. A rules light system can be very elegant in what information it needs to convey. The key element is clarity and communication, not volume of the words. Second, the desire for clarity doesn't mean that I feel enigmatic elements or mysteries are bad, or that flexibility in options is bad. There are many RPGs where mystery is a strong element to their settings, where giving official answers to things might be antithetical to the overarching goals of the work. In such cases, making clear that these things are meant to be mysteries or coding them as such is a far better situation than if a game were to simply forget to mention certain things or present contradicting information in a way that is unclear if it's just poor editing or an intentional choice. The showing that there is intention behind it does a lot for the communication aspect and for teaching players how the game is wanting you to understand it. When it comes to breadth and depth, it'll be important to remember that this element of any discussion I give isn't a measure of quality, but merely a description as to its nature. Some games are designed to have a high amount of flexibility and cover a lot of options or styles of story. These would be ones that we consider having high breadth, while a game focused around a very particular narrative, a very specific genre and type of story it wants to tell, those would be considered as having little breadth. Depth, on the other hand, is a measure of how complex and rich a game can make whatever amount of breadth that it has, how much time and effort it can dedicate to its core topics and flesh those out. Finally, we have vibes. As one might guess, vibes are a much more subjective lens for me to take. It's heavily tied to things like engaging with the tone and personality of the writing. What seems to be the political undertones and implications of a work. What emotions does the game evoke in me? Is the art charming or gorgeous? This lens is immensely subjective, so much so that I was at first considering to skip it in an attempt to give the categories more of an objective-ish feel. But RPGs are an art. There is rarely anything truly objective in the evaluation, and it would be wrong on my part to treat it as such. These works are far more than just their bones. They have a magic and artistry to them that defies rigid categories of quality, and that deserves to be acknowledged and discussed. And with that, I think I'll leave this video on a note that any of the judgments I make don't innately mean that X game isn't fun. I may find that there are games where I doubt I could have much fun engaging with it, but RPGs as a medium has a wonderful cheat when it comes to fun. You're hopefully playing with your friends. RPGs are a time when you are engaging with creativity with your friends, and that is often going to be a fun time, regardless of any of the ways someone like me could be judgmental about a system. I myself have so many criticisms and issues with D&D 5e, but I still attend my friend's bi-weekly campaign because playing around being an autistic lizard folk priest of some religion I made up, or a shape-shifting trickster devil girl with a dark and edgy backstory, bouncing it off my fellows' characters or my GM stories, is such a sincerely fun time. RPGs are something that I feel is very interesting to think about and critique, but that criticism needs to be understood as something that won't always matter to the people rolling the dice or stacking a Jenga tower. So please, if we end up tearing down an RPG you like, do not take that as claiming that you can't have fun with a particular game, or that you're having bad wrong fun. Not sure how long it'll be before our first discussion or review video ends up coming out. We're currently considering doing one for the Curseborn RPG by Onyx Path Publishing. We may end up putting out a video about something a bit more niche and indie. Hope you end up enjoying whatever we end up putting out.